Welcome to the Reflections Cast, where we invite you to join us in an exploration of the teachings of our dad, Skip Ross. In each episode, we will listen to a talk or lecture from Skip, and then discuss what we might be able to apply to our daily lives and reflect on how they can inspire us to grow and change. We hope to continue his legacy and join our listeners in finding new insights and perspectives. Here's episode 5, Goal Setting, the Ultimate Goal. Hey everybody, welcome to the podcast. I'm Steven.
And I'm Melody, and we are so glad to be back with you for another episode of the Reflections Cast. We've been having a lot of fun over the last few weeks getting this podcast going and just taking some time to share some recordings from our dad and learn some things about love and now about goal setting. So this episode is going to be wrapping up our little goal setting series that we've had going on for the last few weeks. And it's just been a joy to learn and review these things and talk about them together. So thank you guys for tuning in.
Absolutely. And I just want to also thank you guys for sending us feedback. Please continue with that feedback. You can send us either a voicemail on our Spotify page, which is The Reflections Cast on Spotify, or you can check us out on YouTube, leave us a comment, subscribe if you want to on there. We do have some special things that are available on YouTube that aren't on other methods of listening to the podcast. Like we do have chapters. We have our affiliate links for the books recommendations that Melody always is giving us. So check that out. It's a really cool way to stay even more connected with the podcast than any other medium we have available to you. So check those out. And please leave us a comment because we love to hear from you guys. You can also email us at thereflectionscast@gmail.com. All right. So like Melody was saying, I'm super pumped about all the cool things that we have going on. And there's something else that we've been talking about that I really want you to guys hear more about. And that is the Pioneer Circle. Melody, can you tell them more about the Pioneer Circle, please?
Yeah, it's been super fun, you guys. We've been having a great time getting the Pioneer Circle launched. Again, that is our subscription-based content service to provide access to an app, access to group coaching, and access to multiple weekly videos from myself and other members of our Circle A leadership team, geared to families and really anyone else who is a part of the Circle A community or who wants to learn more about the future legacy of Skip's work. It's really all revolving around this podcast and the Pioneer Circle. So we would love to have you guys check it out. We are working towards our first 100 families. So you can check it out at circleacamp.com/pioneers. And there's some videos there and other information to kind of give you the full scope of what we're doing. But it's just been a really great way to continue the momentum that we had from our summit up in Michigan a few weeks ago, and to just keep our community connected and working together to become the people that we're created to be. So it's been really fun.
Yeah. And I love that our goal is families, because we want this content to be something that enriches the lives of an entire community, right? And you do that through not just a single person, but everyone that they're connected to. And so I love that the goal is 100 families. And so if you're enjoying this kind of content, you've got some families that you know that might be able to appreciate this kind of content as well. Maybe you don't know if they want to be fully involved in the Pioneer Circle quite yet. Send them the podcast. Let them listen to some of this content. I'll give them an idea, or even better yet, tell them about the summit, because there's another one coming up and it is going to be amazing. And they are not going to want to miss out on that either. Check out that stuff. All right, guys. Well, we are about to get into the final segment with Skip. Melody, do you want to take us in?
Yeah, so we are going to jump back into this conversation about goal setting that we've been in over the last few weeks. And today, Dad's going to be talking about rationalization, which is always a fun topic. And then we're going to be talking a little bit about the ultimate goal. So I think we're going to be inspired, learn a lot, and hopefully we'll have some discussion afterwards. So we'll catch you guys on the other side.
So I guess the question that I have to ask myself from time to time, and I suggest maybe you would profit by doing so as well, how do I rationalize? What is the pathway that I take to rationalize when I do what I know I shouldn't do? What is the pathway you take of rationalization? When we are really honest with ourselves, we know the kind of thing that goes on inside and the way we begin to kid ourselves. And most of the time, we just soon it stays at kid ourselves rather than, I just lied to myself. I find it more powerful when I can say, I just lied to myself, because I don't like to lie. What are the most common reasons you and I fail to do things? What stories do we tell ourselves? List at least 5 rationalizations that you use for not following through. The second step is to formulate decisive habits. Formulate decisive habits. Successful people have a few things in common. Successful people have a focus on a plan for their life. So the first part of that plan to succeed in life is to answer the first of these 3 questions. Number 1, what is my purpose? Why are you on planet Earth? What was your life meant to accomplish? Is it just an accident? Are you just a blip on the radar screen of the universe? Or is there something significantly designed as the purpose for your life? What I believe is that every one of us has a specific purpose. God designed, God given, God inspired, and God empowered if we will allow Him to. So I guess the first step for me is decide, what is that purpose? What's the goal you're after? What's the goal or goals that fit in to that purpose of life? What is it that will take you step by step toward the accomplishing of the purpose of your life? Now, for many years, I have kind of continued to push those things, goals and purpose, to try and bring them to kind of a one decision, so that the ultimate goal of my life is the purpose of my life. And when I know the ultimate goal of my life, then everything that I do is planned back from that ultimate goal, rather than, as most people do, trying to plan forward from this point to this point. I would rather take the ultimate goal and think and plan backwards. Where do I want to be in 20 years in regard to this goal? And in 10 years in regard to the ultimate goal? And in 5 years in regard to the ultimate goal? Many years ago, I discovered that gave purpose and meaning to even the smallest, most insignificant thing in my life. There was nothing that had no purpose or reason in my life once I began to get the ultimate goal thinking straight. And the question I ask myself frequently is, are you willing to do whatever it takes? That's really the crucial question to accomplish anything worthwhile in life. What do you need to do in order to make happen what you say you want to happen? What big and little things can you do immediately to produce the result that you want? There is a huge need for personal integrity when you're trying to make something like this really make a difference and work. in your life. So one of the exercises that I would suggest that I take myself through from time to time is to talk to myself about where is the integrity in what I'm doing. Integrity also means the state of being wholesome, unimpaired. So from time to time, I take myself through the exercise of asking, are there things in your life, things that you think about, things that you do, things that you say, that hold you back, impair you from reaching that purpose of life? If there's something that's getting in my way of the ultimate purpose of my life, then I need to get rid of that. And only when I am whole and unimpaired do I have a real shot at getting to the purpose and goal of my life. Integrity is the quality or condition of being complete. And there are a number of synonyms for integrity that I began to take myself through to ask myself the question, is this true of you, Skip? Honesty, uprightness, rectitude, unity, wholeness, purity, goodness, sincerity, virtue, probity. So I take myself through these thoughts in relationship to how am I living. I'm responsible for me. You are responsible for you. And if I don't go through that process from time to time, I lose the right to talk to others about doing that same kind of thing in their own life. So I recommend it to you. Is it easy? I don't find it to be easy, because sometimes when I get to words like honesty, I mean just plain simple honesty, I find that I've been kidding myself. I've been using some cushioners. I've been softening the blow to the reality of not doing what I know to be done in order to get what it is I say I want. You all are familiar with the phrase that I use a lot. In fact, I used it just yesterday, I think it was. To know and not to do is not to know. So I want to know, are there places in my life where I say, I know about this, I know about goal setting, I know about ultimate purpose in life, I know, but am I doing it? If I say I know and I do not do, then at some point I'm kidding myself, cushioning the blow to say you really don't know it like you need to know it yet. And frequently I discover I don't know it like I need to know it yet. That's why I keep studying, reading, teaching. So here are a couple of questions. What are you unhappy about in your career, your relationships, your business, yourself, your rationalizations? Write down some of the things that disturb you or are disturbing you at the current point, this current point in your life. And if you tell me I am not disturbed about anything, I guess I have to accept that. I would encourage you to go back through the exercise on where is the integrity and rationalizations. The second or seventh, whatever number you have on this, what are you committed to doing instead? Decide what new goal you want and then write why you are committed to attaining the result.
All right. Well, that is our last portion from Skip for our goal setting conversation. And I think that landing it surrounding ultimate purpose is very wise and very important, because it doesn't do us well to set a lot of goals if they aren't moving us in that direction. So I love that he kind of landed it there. So I'll share a few little observations, and then we'll jump into some questions. He starts this section off talking about rationalizations, and I wish we had more of that recording, because I would like to hear more of what he says about that. I mean, I can conjure up in my memory and imagination what more he would say about it, but it's still good to hear him talk about it, because it just brings so much to light that you think is like not necessarily rationalizing, and then when you hear him talk about it, you're like, yeah, I do that, and I do that, and I do that. So the thing that challenged me the most in listening to this segment was when he said to list your top 5 rationalizations, because I don't know that I've done that in a good long time. And I'm sitting here thinking like, I think I need to do that. Like, I think that would be a good exercise, because sometimes we can just like be blind to them, or just like choose to be blind to them. So I'm going to do that exercise.
I love that he doesn't even assume that you don't have a top 5. Like,
right.
You do.
Yep.
You got to think about it.
Yep, for sure.
I do have an example of me doing that exact thing. Well, it's really about me not being honest with myself about the ultimate way that I want to live my life.
Right.
Well, maybe not the ultimate way, but an obvious goal that I have, which is I don't want to take away time from the things that matter most to me.
Yep.
And as I was listening to these exact words, I was sitting in the driveway of a fast food restaurant, which I don't do fairly often. But on this particular day, I was running around. I was really busy, and I wasn't going to be home in time for dinner. And so I thought, well, I'll just grab some food and head back home, and I'll be home in time to tuck my kids in, and yay. And I get in the line, and there's a bunch of cars in front of me, and it's going real slow. And now I'm locked in. I can't back up. I can't get out. I just got to sit through this line. It's been like 20 minutes, and then they get the order wrong. And I'm sitting there, and I'm listening to this, and I'm like, I'm not being honest with myself. Like, this food is not good for me. One, I could have been home in time to be with my children, and I've missed out on that. I chose to put myself here, and I chose to because I lied to myself and thinking like, well, I need food. I didn't need this food, because not only is this food like not fast now, but it's not good for me at all. Like, it's really bad for me. It's going to take away time that I'll have with my kids in the future too. And so, yeah. And I was like, wow, I've just rationalized my way into a bad choice that doesn't align with what my goals in life should be. So anyway, it hit hard listening to that. But that was my little personal example.
It's all of us hard, I think. But it's good to notice. It's good to notice. So thank you for sharing that, for sure. I could share many similar stories.
It's something that I think, unless I think Dad was actually a really good example of living with this intentionality in everything he did. Like, just in listening to him, I think like, okay, well, he liked going to movies, and that doesn't have much intention behind it, but he never went to a movie just for the fun of it. He would go to a movie because he wanted to invest time with us. He wanted to know what we were interested in. He wanted to build a relationship with us. So he would go with us, but he never went on his own. He never just like went to experience a movie, because everything that he did was about a higher intention. And, I think if you're not living with that actively rattling around in your brain, it's really easy to just be like, well, I did it because it was fun. I did it because it was fast. I did it because it was easy.
Right.
That's not a big deal.
Right.
But it is, if it all sums up to a life not well lived.
Yep. That's a really good point, I think. And it kind of leads into really what the heart of this segment is about, which is purpose, living towards that ultimate purpose, living towards that ultimate goal. And I mean, Dad definitely always did that. And like, even in those times that you're talking about, like he did love to have fun. Like he would have fun for the sake of fun, but his fun would always be towards the purpose, not away from the purpose. So, and towards the goal, not away from the goal. And so he was an awesome example of being able to find things that are fun. Like a lot of, if we start thinking about goals as, just doing the hard things in life, then it doesn't sound fun. It sounds like the opposite of fun. But Dad was an example of like showing how a life can be lived with joy and happiness, but towards growth, towards purpose. And so I know I learned a lot from him in that area. So yeah, the next thing that really stood out to me in this recording was just the idea of the ultimate goal. And that's something that Dad talked about a lot. I'm not sure how much further study I've done on that particular topic outside of Dad's teaching on it. I think I mentioned this book a couple episodes ago, but the book Hero on a Mission by Donald Miller is sort of in that vein. And there are some other books I've read recently where it's becoming a popular, I don't know, coaching, not necessarily self-help, but like self-growth technique to essentially write your eulogy when you're young. Wow. And in doing that, not only in contemplating death, because that is kind of being taught as a healthy exercise as well, but in deciding what do I most hope people will say about me after I'm gone. In writing that, it gives you kind of that ultimate purpose to live towards that person that you want to become, that you choose to become. So there is more teaching about this, but Dad was very committed to this idea well before all of these current authors. But I think, I don't know that he ever wrote a eulogy for himself. I don't think he did. He didn't share it with me if he did, but he did have his book of affirmations of what he wanted to be true about him. And I think it's sort of in a similar vein. So, but Dad always said that his ultimate goal was something that could only happen after he was gone. And I know that at least part of it was the continuation of the work of Circle A and of his teaching. And so it's cool to be on this podcast talking about his ultimate goal, because this is literally it in some ways. So, and all of you listening are the embodiment of that goal. So thank you guys for being a part of it.
Yeah.
The other piece that stood out to me that I love hearing him talk about, and I want to find more recordings on the topic of integrity. As I grow and age in my own personal journey, I think I'm coming to discover that that's likely my highest value personally. So I love hearing Dad talk about integrity and how it is essentially the quality or condition of being complete and whole. So I loved that conversation, and I hope we can find more recordings on that, because it was really good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love that this is how it was brought to a conclusion for the whole series. I love that it's how we started this podcast of discussions, and I have some questions about it. I think that my questions are all meant in the best of intention, and just to kind of flesh out these ideas even further, because I think that it's one of those things. It's one of those things that's necessary to explore and expand and expound and give clarity and closure so that everybody just understands it a little bit more. So my first question is, and I think that this is a particularly relevant question for Melody as a pastor, that she can give a little bit more clarity onto this mentality towards defining your life. But if your purpose is defined by God, how can we decide it? Because Skip does say that we decide it. Rather, should we not discover it? And then the question would be, how do we discover it? Mm. So is it a word issue? Is it a definition issue? Is it something that needs further expounding for better understanding? Mm. Can you give more of a spiritual component to that?
So you're basically asking if Dad's suggestion is that our purpose is already defined by God, then how could that be something that we would decide? We would really just be discovering what is already true, is what you're saying, basically.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good question. I'm sure theologians have debated it for thousands of years, and it's a good question. I can give you my perspective on it, which I likely think is also Dad's. I think that we do have a specific purpose defined by God, in the sense that we are the sons and daughters of God. And as we live on this earth, like, our essential purpose is participating in the same work that he is participating in, which is the restoration of all things, which is bringing all things back to wholeness again, kind of that integrity thing that we talked about before, this idea of shalom, peace, wholeness, all things made right, all things made new. That's essentially the end of the story that we're living right now. So as the sons and daughters of God, as we choose to receive the Spirit of God in us and become more and more like him, then our purpose is essentially to work towards shalom, to work towards wholeness, to work towards peace. And in that, I mean, we're not going to get into a whole biblical teaching here, but I mean, Jesus says very specifically, like, you are here to be salt and light in the world. You're here to bring out the God flavors in the world. You're here to illuminate the God colors in the world. That's who you are. And that's your purpose, right? So there is a specific purpose defined by God that I think all humans are born with and given. We're born to be light. We're born to reflect the glory of our Creator. But then I think there is also specific purposes that we can choose to pursue. I think we all have gifts and talents and abilities, God-given, that honor him as we pursue them, right? So if we are born as an amazing athlete, then it honors God to pursue, that athleticism into whatever path we might find. And so that's maybe part of the discovery of it. But I don't think that pursuing those gifts and talents is necessarily the actual ultimate purpose, as much as simply being light in whatever path we choose. So I think there is the general purpose that is defined and specified. And then there is the specific paths that we get to choose. And I think as long as our hearts and desires are towards the restoration of all things, I think God loves whatever path we choose, whether, we may be born with more than one skill, and we may only be able to pursue a path that highlights one. We may be a great athlete and a great singer. I don't think we've lost some part of our purpose because we chose a certain path. I think that's part of the awesomeness of being able to be free agents as human and being able to choose a path and honor God in that path. So I don't know if that fully answers your question, but I that's my thoughts.
I think that was a amen moment, a deep dive into a little bit of spirituality that, was a very critical component for Dad in developing these talks. And I think giving a little bit of clarity in some of his verbiage or ideas is always a necessary component with these. So Thank you. I think that was a great response. All right. So question number 2. This is where it starts getting a little bit heavier. Should we derive purpose from our ultimate goal? What if your ultimate goal might not be accomplished in your lifetime? Are you able to live a satisfactory life if your purpose is never fully realized? So the origin of these questions, or the
heart of them,
the encapsulation of this, is when we are trying to set up a system like what Dad is describing. My understanding was that he was saying, that there is an ultimate goal that you're working for that then informs the purpose of everything else you do in life. and that gives you this thing that you're constantly working towards. Is that what he's saying there? Is there more clarity you can give to what kind of a setup of a hierarchy of decision making you go through, so that as you set up a life where you're working towards something, that it can still give you a sense of satisfaction in what you've accomplished and knowledge that what you're doing is working towards that ultimate state?
Yeah, I think I understand what you're asking. And I think the words can get a little confusing between goal and purpose, and, you know, which one is the highest piece of the hierarchy here. I guess I would say, you know, I don't know that there's for sure like a right and wrong way to look at this. I think whatever works in a person's heart and mind to move them towards flourishing and wholeness in their life, whatever verbiage works, I think works. I think what Dad was saying, and what I've always kind of thought is that a goal to me is something that can be measured, right? A purpose is kind of something bigger than that. So in my mind, there is a purpose for us living, an individual, unique purpose, and then a global purpose, right? And then I think our ultimate goal is to fulfill that purpose. And then we set other goals in our lives to move toward it. But what I think is that if that's how we're defining ultimate goal, then I don't really like calling it an ultimate goal, because a goal in my mind is measurable and completable. And in this sense, in my mind, I don't believe any of us who are Christ followers, which I know not everyone listening to this podcast is, but if we're coming from that belief system, I don't believe any of us are going to see the fulfillment of our ultimate goal until the actual end of the story, until the actual restoration of all things, until all things are made whole and all things are made new. How could we be experiencing that ultimate goal? Like, in my mind, that's the only experience of the ultimate goal becoming reality. So in my mind, like, the purpose is to live towards that, is to move towards that, is to participate in that. And every goal that we set is moving us towards that. So I don't know if those are the exact words that Dad would necessarily use, but I do think that's the heart of what Dad believed. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. I think he would be pleased with that response. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then to take those ideas even further, I want to talk a bit about like how you define what that ultimate goal is. So the question is, how definitive must your ultimate goal be? And is it not better to make kind of a generally vague goal? When is your goal big enough? Can it be too big and complicated? Can it be too small and too vague? For me personally, my life goal or purpose has not truly changed, even though my life has gone through some really radical changes. And that's, I feel, intentional. It's on purpose. For me, those events deepen my understanding of life and purpose and how I choose to live, but they didn't change that ultimate goal or purpose. They just made it bigger and maybe more complex. I think, like, an example, like marriage, it didn't change it. Children didn't change it. Career paths didn't change it. Ultimately, there's nothing that could happen to me that would change it, because it's irrevocably tied to who I am, the way I choose to live, and my beliefs and my morals and everything. So all of those things, if we take it even further, getting married, it didn't serve that goal then, and having kids didn't serve that goal, and career path didn't necessarily serve the realization of that goal. So is it a bad goal? Is it not big enough? Is my thinking towards ultimate goal or ultimate purpose flawed? Is it not correct? And if something doesn't add to accomplishing that ultimate goal, are we not supposed to pursue it? Like, for me, those events, They've made my life fuller, richer, more satisfying. If I were to include those events into my life purpose, I would be defining my life on factors that kind of are outside of my control in some ways. In encapsulation of the question, going back to the beginning, how do we define a foolproof ultimate goal? How is this accomplished? How do we get these parameters to set? And what really is it? Because if it's not all those things that I just listed, then what is it that he's really talking about? Because he doesn't define it in this lesson any further, I think, than what we've heard.
Right. Yeah. I think those are all good questions. I think those are questions that have swirled in my mind over the years as I've listened to Dad talk about this and thought about it in my own life and, in the lives of people I love. I think, again, there's probably not a formula that is like, this is the right way to think about this, and all other ways are lesser. It's probably something that is like only you and God can answer for you. Only me and God can answer for me. But I do think still the questions are worth asking and talking about, because obviously we can, learn from each other and grow from the knowledges and experiences of others. I think that from what you're saying, it sounds like, and I don't know exactly what your ultimate goal is or your purpose, that, how you would say it, but it sounds like it's absolutely on the right track, because life experiences like what you're talking about, family, career, shouldn't alter the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal should be something in my mind that's kind of outside of those experiences that may or may not happen, whether you do or do not want them to happen. Like, so beautifully for you, they have happened. You found a wonderful wife. You were able to have children. For some people, like that can't happen. And so an ultimate goal in my mind is really about who we're becoming. And that's why I like this idea of the eulogy, even though it's, I don't know, maybe a little bit morbid, but not really, because essentially it's saying, like, at the end of my days, whether X or Y or Z happens, this is what I hope people saw in me. This is what I hope people remember. And sure, it could be specific things, I was president of the company, or I ran the marathon, or whatever the, tactile success sort of goals might be. But in my mind, like, the most beautiful ultimate goal is about the person that you are, the qualities that you cultivated throughout your life, the relationships that you tended. To me, that is the most important thing. And I know that Dad would say the same thing. Certainly the way that he lived his life. And, it's certainly the belief system that he ascribed to. So, like I was saying, in my mind, the full ultimate goal is the restoration of all things, right? Full shalom. But in the sense of what we can achieve, what we can accomplish, what we can become, I think the ultimate goal is about the person that you are growing into, and not necessarily even the person that you, on your dying day, have achieved being, but the person that you were always moving towards being. To me, it's always a towards. It's never an arrival. Mm-hmm. Like I said, until the end of all things, when we are hopefully the very best versions of ourselves. So, I mean, I think we could talk for a long time about this, but I think that's probably my short response. So, your other smaller questions of, can a life goal be, too big or too small or too complicated or too vague? Yeah, I think it can be all of those things. I think that, mine has shifted in a way over the years. It's not become something different. It's just become something more defined. and maybe it's become something bigger, but essentially I think that it's about the person that we're becoming. So
I love that response. I love that you tied that little bow at the end there of talking about how you personally have felt that your ultimate purpose or goal has maybe expanded over the years, but is true to you universally. And I would say the same thing. I think in seminar as a kid, writing on a 3x5 card about the person I want to be, I think there are elements of what I wrote just a few days ago, or not a few days ago. For me, it was a few weeks ago, but for most people who are on the Pioneer Circle, it was a few days ago, writing in your Every app about what that ultimate purpose is that then informs all of those goals underneath that you read every morning, every night. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, I'm telling you guys, check out Pioneer Circle. It's got some really awesome stuff that's really going to help you in living this type of lifestyle that we are exploring together in these teachings, and really expand on further teachings with some really awesome people that we want you to know.
For sure.
So with that, I think we have reached the conclusion of this episode of goal setting, and concluded our series on goal setting for the time being. It's not like Skip has not had quite a few lessons on goal setting.
We'll be circling back.
I'm sure we will. But I love that, one, we started with the love seminar, and then two, straight into ultimate purpose. I think we're hitting some highlights here. So
For sure.
I'm looking forward to the next batch.
All right, guys. Well, thank you again for joining in. And don't forget to send us your feedback. We really, really appreciate it. Really appreciate the community that continues to grow to become all that we're created to be. So let's keep doing it together. We will talk to you guys next time.
See ya.